Hey friends and book lovers, welcome back. I am finally doing a wrap up for January, but I'm also including my December books in this one because I didn't really read a lot in December and I just thought I would include everything in the January wrap up so we could talk about everything here. Otherwise, the December wrap up would have just been way too short. I definitely think in December that I got a little bit of burnout from just life in general and I needed a bit of a slowdown, so I didn't get around to reading a lot. I was also traveling quite a bit in December, so there wasn't too much time for me to get a lot of reading in, and I was reading a couple large books. One I finished in December and one I ended up finishing in January. So let's get into the things that I did finish. The only book I actually finished in December was Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. I started this when it first released and I ended up finishing it in December. This one is actually also a tome, so I have to say it wasn't like a short novel. It was about 700 pages, so it's pretty healthy. This one slowed me down a little bit because there were so many time jumps. I know a lot of folks love the time jumps, but that was one of the small things that kind of didn't work for me. I would have preferred, I don't know, a little bit more context, I think, because we were jumping a lot of different years and I couldn't always tell how much time had passed between chapters. Since I was reading it mostly on my Kindle, I couldn't like just flip back and forth as easily as I could have had I been reading it physically, but this was wonderful. I love this series. I put it as one of my favorites of 2021 series. So if you're intrigued and you want to see that video, I'll post that up above and down below so you guys can check out my favorites. But this series, the entire thing was solidly on there and I am just so happy that I read it. I mean, I don't think I was planning on reading it, and then after it got chosen as a Discord buddy read, I ended up reading the entire series and just falling in love with it. So it was really amazing. I think everyone that I know has read this series at this point because it was just so popular, and Fonda Lee is definitely another new favorite author of this year, and I'm just happy to have discovered someone else who's writing that I absolutely love. One of the books I finished this year was a novella, and that was The Return of the Sorceress by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This was an arc that was given to me on NetGalley. I think it was published in the fall, but I just didn't get around to finishing it. It was a really short novella, so I don't know what happened. And it was all right. It was an interesting kind of mysterious novella, and I think I would have loved to see a more fleshed out story. It felt like a fantasy novella can be a little tough to do unless there's already a world built in a different series, but I don't think that was the case with this one. I could be wrong because I haven't read too many of her other novels, but this one seemed to be kind of like a standalone novella and we didn't have a lot of world building or background, and what we got was just enough, but as someone who was used to reading epic fantasy about different worlds, it didn't feel like enough. So I think I gave this like a 3.5 or a 4-star or something like that. It was just okay. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it, and I liked the writing, but I don't know if I would read another novella unless it was much more fleshed out. However, I am intrigued by other novels that she's written, and hopefully I will maybe check one of those out in the near future. The other book that I finished in January, finally, is The Eye of the World in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. I was watching the Prime show as I was reading this, so it was really kind of hard not to compare the two, especially because I know that the Prime show takes from the second and third books in the series as well, at least this first season. But I have to say, the scenes and things in the actual book are better. There are certain things that they do well in the show. I mean, the book kind of starts off a little slow and the show kind of takes a bit more speed to the beginning, which I do appreciate because I felt like this was a little slow for me. But I think had I been just reading the novel, it would have still been intriguing and I would have been able to maybe understand why he set up the world and the town the way he did and why he did kind of ease our way into the story and into the action. However, I would have just liked to start off with a bang, so I had kind of wished that the beginning was a little faster paced, but the end half, the last half of this was just so epic and so amazing that I just couldn't put the last half or the last 35% down for the life of me. It was just super incredible and I had such a great time reading this. I will be continuing on with the second book in the series, The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan, this month, and I am buddy reading that with a friend of mine over at A Fantasy and Fiction. Her name is Ashley, so I'll link her stuff down below, but she's awesome and she's also reading this with me, so I'm very excited to have someone to buddy read this series with, or at least one or two of the books out of the series with, because it is quite a long and arduous journey to get through this whole thing, and that is just a personal goal of mine because I want to read the whole series. The first time I read this, I was very young and I only read up to like 4 or 5 books. I never finished the series. I don't even know if it was finished at the time that I started reading this, but I definitely want to get it done now and just see where the story ended up. I also don't remember a lot of the story, but again, I think it's fun to read it after a decade of not reading it. And I'll also be posting a vlog of the Eye of the World that I've been doing. I'm gonna finish that up and post that hopefully sometime this month so you can see my thoughts as I go through the book itself. The next book I read in January was also a novella, and this one is called Unsteady by Nicole Northwood. Now, Nicole Northwood is a kind of new author, and this is one of her first releases. She also has a book coming out in June, which I'm excited to read, and I did receive an ARC of, so fingers crossed. I'm very excited. This is a contemporary romance novella about kind of like a one-night stand, maybe turning into something more. I don't know if that gives away, but it is really interesting, and it is actually a really well-contained novella. I still felt like I wanted more from the characters and I wanted to know more about what's going to happen next, but I was satisfied with the novella itself. And I gave this one a 4 stars. It's my first contemporary novel or novella ever. I don't know if I'm gonna keep going into contemporary romance, but this one was definitely really fun. So if you're looking for like a quick and easy novella for contemporary romance, I would definitely check this one out. And I think it's also on Kindle Unlimited, so you guys can check it out on Kindle Unlimited if you have that subscription. The final book I read in the month of January was These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. This was the January pick for the Atlantis Discord that I run with my friend Kristen, and I was really excited to read this. I had received a copy from Illimicrate, and I had heard a little bit about this. I had heard that it was kind of a ripoff from Aquatar and from Blood and Ash series, and I have to say, there are very many similarities, but just on a very YA level. Aquatar starts out YA, but then gets more adult as the books go on, but These Hollow Vows is definitely more YA. There's still some steamy scenes, nothing too spicy, but it's definitely very YA. I had a great time reading this. It was fun. It was kind of like a junk food read, if you want to think of it that way, and it went by super quickly. I definitely binge read this in like a couple days. I gave this one a 3.5 stars just because there were some things in it that felt a little too familiar and I wished it would have been a little more original. But overall, I had a good time with the story, and it is Fae heavy, obviously Fae Kingdom heavy, and there are like the evil versus the good Fae, but then there's also a lot beneath that veneer that is laid on evil versus good. And I think that premise and trope is actually really interesting to tackle in a novel. So I had a really great time with this one. This one is a duology. I will be reading the second one when it comes out, I think in June. It's called These Twisted Bonds, and I'm wondering how it's gonna end. I have a feeling that we all know how it's gonna end, and you kind of have this sense of predictability within this novel as well, but it's still really fun to read it even though you kind of know what's gonna happen. I think all of us on the Discord that read it had a good time, despite kind of being able to predict the outcome of the novel. If you've read any of these novels, please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear from you and see what you've read in the month of January. And if you loved or hated any of the ones that I read, please let me know. I always love to hear your opinions. If you like this video, please click that like button. That does really help me out a lot. And if you want to see more content from me, please don't hesitate to subscribe.